Good morning, ladies and gentlemen and colleagues from around India and from various places around the world. My name's Sarah Deverill. I'm Director of Examinations at the British Council here in India. And it's my great pleasure this morning to introduce you to Professor Geetha Durairajan, who for many of you will need no further introduction. However, for those of you who are less familiar with Geetha, this is just to say that she's currently Professor and Head of the Department of Testing and Evaluation here at the English and Foreign Languages University in Hyderabad. As you will have learned from the previous session, she's also one of the key organizers of this conference, heading the academic committee. Geetha has taught postgraduate and research level courses in the field of English language education for the past 24 years and conducted many workshops in the areas of language testing and research in ELT. Her qualifications and publications make a very long list, which I won't go into here, but some of her areas of interest include language testing and the use of the first language as a primary research means in the second language classroom. Geetha is going to speak to us this morning about open book examinations, particularly for content-based courses and for higher order skills. This morning's session will run for approximately 60 minutes. We expect that Geetha will be talking for around 40 minutes, and after that there'll be an opportunity for you to interact and ask some questions. So do think of what questions you might like to ask during the first 40 minutes. If we find that you've got many more questions, we'll discuss how we might deal with that later in the program. But without any further ado, I'd like you to give a very warm welcome to Professor Geetha Durairajan.
Good morning, everyone. Let me say that, I think it's a pleasure, it's an honor, and I don't know what else to be here. That is the title of my presentation. You will find that the abstract list has left out the word open. Let me begin by talking about how this is a big first for me. I've never ever done a plenary presentation where I'm flagging off a huge academic exercise like this. Very nervous. But then, and this is in spite of the fact I'm a professor, 24 odd years experience, and lots of students, colleagues, ELT fraternity, many, many familiar faces. Then I asked myself, if today, because of this performance, which is always a test, I'm so nervous, my hands are ice cold. How do people feel during high-stakes examinations, assessments, and evaluations, particularly when performances are evaluated? Every test is a performance, where gatekeeping is the norm, where careers are decided, in or out. And what I'm trying and hoping to do through my presentation today is talk about an examination system that maybe will take away some of this fear, tension, stress, and anxiety. The organization of my presentation is what I've just done, which is the reflections, and then I'm going to quickly take you through the nature of knowledge, learning, and evaluation, and then look at existing practices, open book examinations as a solution, definitions, types. I'm not going to read all of this, and end with this. What is the nature of education and knowledge in the National Curriculum Framework? I'm going to quickly go through all of this. Education is inclusive for all of us, for all disadvantaged, vulnerable, all sectors of society. Knowledge today is deliberately seen as different from information. because it's fluid. Most importantly, it's to be constructed by the child. This is something which we are trying to bring into school education in India. What is the nature of teaching, learning, and evaluation in education? A, the quick facts. Learning is not memorization and transmission. We're saying internalization should happen. And therefore, the purpose of teaching is to help children learn, help them engage, help them think, help them grow. Any of my students here will agree with me. I keep talking about this all the time. Evaluation is responsibility, not power. We cannot see it as a means of selection, as an elimination test. It has to be an integral part of the learning process. I've taken all of this from the National Curriculum Framework, nothing new. Therefore, what is the nature of teacher education that we need to ensure that that kind of teaching, learning, and evaluation happens in schools? A, reflective practice. If teachers can't reflect and think, how are we going to get our children to think and reflect? B, therefore, integrative, eclectic, using diversity of learning spaces. We are saying children come from different kinds of organizations, from different homes, from different contexts. All of that has to be taken into account in our teaching and learning. How are we going to do that? Remember, I said knowledge has to be constructed. We'll have to help that child to do this. Therefore, it's us as teacher educators, us as teachers, who have to cope with this huge demand. National Council for Teacher Education, I've just taken 2 quotations from there. What is the nature of evaluation demanded for schools? A, comprehensive. B, must evaluate conceptual pedagogic aspects. This is teacher education evaluation as well. That is in teacher education programs. Attitudes, values, dispositions, and most important, we need to find out whether our teachers can reflect or not. How is that going to happen? I'm contrasting it with, we've asked for a certain kind of evaluation, but what's happening in teacher education courses today? I'm not going to look at teaching and learning. I'm going to look at evaluation. I did a quick survey of lots of B.Ed and M.Ed courses, and this is what we had. Essay questions, short answer questions, recall, some multiple choice, mostly factual, reproductive. And I liked this quotation by Churchill. Age-old, but I thought it captured what was happening in evaluation today. They aim to find out what I do not know rather than what I do know. I would have willingly displayed my knowledge. But I won't talk about the second half. I don't like that idea. Therefore, what is the need of the hour? I'm just going to leave that there for 2 minutes. We're talking of reflective practice. So we need an evaluation that, sorry, I'm not able to, yeah. that look at higher order thinking skills. I'm referring to the Bloom taxonomy when I talk of knowledge comprehension. Knowledge comprehension, application, synthesis, evaluation. Can we look at higher order thinking skills? All programs in education, in all professions, talk about core knowledge, backup knowledge. What is this? Some information we need at our fingertips. But as teachers, as researchers, as educators, there are always things that we can go and look up all the time. We can refer. We only need to know where to go. It's like knowing the meanings of some words, but there are lots of other words. Nobody knows the meanings of all words in a dictionary. That doesn't mean that we're not learned or educated. And I'm making a big distinction between core and backup knowledge. Deep surface learning. Memorized today, forgotten 3 hours later. You memorize it, reproduce it in the exam, out. Surface learning. Because you're studying, you're repeating points only to, I'm going to use a very nasty word here, regurgitate or bring it out in some other form in the exam. Take it in, bring it out, and that's the end of it. That's not what we want in our evaluation. If we want teachers to situate their knowledge in suitable contexts, and if they don't do that, they're not going to be able to help children situate knowledge in their contexts. Our exams, our tests, have to ensure that. Again, enabled reflective thinking. I've spoken about this. I'm going to go further. So what I'm saying is that a method of examination that has not taken off in this country, for me, is an excellent alternative. Before I go there, why not other alternative assessment practices? If we look at assignments, we're not going to be able to handle assignments as summative evaluation in large numbers. Again, term papers maybe yes, but only if you have autonomy, not with public examination the way it is in our country. And again, projects, but maybe as a part of ongoing evaluation, but not usually for certification-based evaluation, except in organizations like mine. We're lucky enough where the teacher is also the evaluator. Doesn't happen everywhere else. How am I at time? Okay. Now, let me now go to talking about what for me is the essence of my paper. You've got handouts. You'll know what to do with them by and by. Just be patient. What is an open book examination? To answer my questions about what an exam is, what do people feel about it, teachers and learners, I posted a survey on LTEX and to a whole lot of my students, and a lot of my responses here are collated from their answers. To anybody here who replied to that survey of mine in advance, thank you very much. Okay. See, it's realistic. You can have open-ended tasks which you really cannot do in a closed book exam because a closed book exam is memory. It's a reliable way of testing how much a student has. All these are quotations, by the way. It does not test theory, but practical knowledge, problem-solving questions. Discuss a context in class, provide a new context, and they can apply that knowledge and tell you how the problem can be solved. A few more definitions, again taken from people who wrote about it. You have access to resources, but you are testing analytical and critical faculties. It can help you apply, analyze, evaluate, synthesize knowledge. It can also provide constructive feedback. I'll come to that when I come to my examples. Before I go on to talk about teacher education programs, I thought we should take 2 minutes to look at why not in the testing of language, of proficiency. Is it an option open? Is it not open? I thought I'd look at that, eliminate it or discuss it. In proficiency tests, the only open book we need is the dictionary. Okay? What is a possible test in this context? This is something which has been around from the 1940s. Any of you type open book, open vocabulary test, you'll get the information, where it's such a lovely exercise. It works wonders in teacher education courses where you want to increase the proficiency of your teachers, which is a big problem for us in this country. Tell them that they can look up the meaning of any word they like with the dictionary and write down the definition in the margins. The next day, a test is created where they can bring what they've written down, not the dictionary again. And then, either they know the meaning of the word because they did not look up the meaning in the dictionary, or they've written it down. Vocabulary increases. Teachers soon realize what they know and don't know. And a lot of discussion happens on what are possibilities. I'm taking what is a proficiency exercise with students. I tried it out with teachers and found amazing results. Okay. I now come to what for me is the essence. What are types of open book exams? And then we will look at advantages, disadvantages, and further. Okay. Three types actually. One, what is called the restricted open book exam. I'm not very happy with it. It allows you to take tables, 1 or 2 primary sources, but only with the prior approval of the instructor. The second is the unrestricted one. You can bring anything you like into the exam hall except an internet connection, a laptop with internet access, and most importantly these days, all my students here will tell you, all cell phones sit on my table. You can't talk and SMS other people and ask for your answers. No phones, no internet, but anything else you like. The third is much more than an open book, open library, open resource. There is an example of that in your handout. I'll refer to it a little later. Okay, now comes my question, because everybody keeps asking me when I meet people, but what are the kinds of questions you can ask? What are possibilities? We're not sure what to do. What I've done is I've taken examples from my own and tests used by a few of my colleagues, either for formative and or summative certification-based evaluation. Okay, could all of you now look at set A? Those of you who don't have a copy, please share. I printed 650. Set A, you may not have the time to actually answer those questions. You may not have the knowledge, but you'll get a sense of what is possible. Multiple choice question. There were a whole series of them. I've given you a very small sample. Okay? This was a course, as I said, in bilingualism and bilingual education. They had studied it. They could come with the texts that they needed. They had to check and write, tick the answers. Okay? Set B, true, false. It's in order. Okay? Now, if you've done the reading and the thinking, the answers to these statements, the statements I've given here on bilingualism, are not from any of the books that they've studied, from the text they've studied, but they're reworded. So you have to read this, go back and think, and get an answer. Okay, look at set C. There are two questions, one on page 1 and one on page 2. Most of you, I'm sure, are familiar with the notions of BICS and CALP. Jim Cummins, basic interpersonal communication skills, cognitive, academic, language proficiency. Rather than asking what is BICS and what is CALP, and context reduced, context embedded, you key these terms in if you don't know them, into Google, you'll get your answers. Cummins's text is available on the net. But the task says, please look at it. What we've done is sat and thought about it and identified 3 different contexts in which language is used. As a student, in teacher education, the teacher has to sit and think about it and tell you, okay, is it BICS, is it CALP, and why? It'll help this teacher decide what to teach, what kinds of material, what kinds of tasks to teach which aspect of language. Look at the second statement. I've just given an example of perspectives on language. Chomsky, Halliday, formal, functional linguistics. If you've studied this area, then answering it is easy. Right now, it's going to look as though, oh my God, I can't answer this. That's because you haven't done the course. Look at set D very, very quickly. This is in class, an open book quiz to ensure that students read their texts and come to class, teacher education course. I'm not going to ask you to go through and answer the questions, but it's possible to create questions like this and make sure that they understand. Can I move to set F? Okay? This is a course, a question on validity and reliability. It's one of my own. I haven't bothered acknowledging which one is mine. And what we've done is, I've taught the notions of validity and reliability, what aspects, what are problems. So I'm checking analysis, synthesis, and evaluation in a new context. If this is the problem, is it a problem in validity? Is it a problem in reliability? Why? What would you do to make that test more valid, more reliable? Including something like ethics, look at R. Consequential validity, inclusive for all, tests under a banyan tree. It's reality. Last of all, is an example of open book, open resource beyond the library. I mean, beyond the classroom into the library. Choose an area which you have to select and pick. Go and create materials that cite your sources. Use the library for it. Let me go further. What are some of the disadvantages of using open book exams? All these are collated from statements made, so I'm just going to quickly read through them and go further. A, I'll pick up the ideas. For the teacher educator, it takes ages to set a paper. As somebody said, 3-hour paper, over a week I spend 6 to 8 hours. You cannot do it at one go. Doesn't happen. Paper setting, orientation, yes. You need to think about it. Correction time. It takes hours because you get alternative, different responses. But then the advantage is feedback can become individualized. I'll come to that next. Disadvantages, again, for the student. Time, lots of books, don't know which one to use. Sometimes they don't give you enough time to open your books. We as teachers have to take care of that. Somebody said, it's a waste of time if I can't locate the answer. The idea of an open book is you cannot locate the answer, but you locate where the answer is available and rewrite it. Okay, then. Nature of orientation, yes. Students have to be taught how to take these exams. As somebody said, I'm not going to read that out. They're just statements. Further, nature of learning. You can't memorize. I like that last one. After 2 years, I've forgotten how to take a traditional exam. I'd perform badly. True. If we want memory-based exams, it's a big disadvantage. What are advantages? Good predictive validity. It's the kind of test that's needed to show whether the teacher can cope later in life as a teacher, closer to real-life tasks. I'm summarizing. Foster critical thinking. And the last statement that said, we're not always immediately able to transfer the essence of a problem to another, of the solution. This helps us make that link. Advantages. No time. Believe me, you can leave the hall and come back in 15 minutes. Nobody will talk to anyone else. They're too busy looking at answers and finding them. Okay? Next. They have time to read and study. Feedback is individualized. Different answers, different feedback. Students learn. You can teach them to self-assess. I have a colleague here who's doing it. Nature of studying. Student here is also teacher-student. I'm doing it for teacher education. Not memory-based. Doesn't require cramming. This is what people who answered my questionnaire told me. Nature of preparation. Doesn't feel like an exam. It makes studying for an exam redundant. That's how an exam should be. Yeah. Nature of answers required. Somebody said, it's teaching me to write because I don't reproduce. I'm thinking, I'm composing text, which is what should happen. Therefore, why are they not popular? Why isn't everybody using them? A, as I said, time needed. B, yes, we need capability. 3, lack of awareness, and I think probably, I don't know if you have other reasons why you haven't used open book exams. I have just 3 more slides. Okay? But why are they the need of the hour? In teacher education, no incubation period. And I'll explain that in 2 minutes or less. Open book exams can simulate. And to answer how and why, I've borrowed 2 slides from a presentation made at last year's conference by Dr. Amol Padwar. The next 2 are not my slides. Yes, please. In all other professional courses, Amol, tell me if I make a mistake. Entry into the profession, the decision point is at one place, the autonomy point is somewhere else. There's a major period of incubation. So, as you can see, there's time for teachers, for professionals to grow. But what happens in teaching? The 2 are nearly the same. Very little CPD, very little incubation, Therefore, I've said this, I'm going to jump. I don't think I need to read that out. I liked that statement of Einstein where he said, he provides the opportunity to learn. I'm stating open book examinations are an amazing opportunity where we can test and still enable learning to happen. Every open book examination is like a last class. By sitting and engaging with those questions, things get sharper, clearer, and focused. Thank you.
If I can ask people to try and keep to questions as much as possible so that we can share the questions around. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for the wonderful... It's me here. Thank you for this wonderful eye-opener. I was just wondering, at what age do you think we should allow this, from what age we should make open book examinations in school?
Okay, as I said, if you're looking at the testing of content in school, even class 6 onwards has been seen as perfectly fine in the research. But my presentation was very clearly for teacher education. But it is possible to take it back to schools, but not for language, content subjects. Okay?
Okay, thank you. There's a gentleman in the middle there. Can you pass the microphone to him, please? Yeah, and it's a good idea if you can, please stand up when you answer the question.
Well, Geetha, thanks for the nice presentation. I think in teacher education, the issue is to assess the teaching efficiency, how good a teacher would be in the class. And I think open examinations can help. What are your ideas about that?
I didn't get that. Help about teacher education.
In teacher education, I think the main thing is to assess how effective the teacher has become after training and how well he or she would be teaching in the classes. I think there should be some criteria to test the teaching skills that the teacher has learned in the real life classroom. And that should be a part of the open examination for teachers.
Okay, see, I am not talking about the practical component of teacher education where skills are tested. But you can test, I know in my hurry, I think I left out one item type which is a modification of the TKT. If you look at that example, I left one or two out, I know, I was in a hurry because I was sure I was running out of time. The last one, B, on page 4, I realized I left out a page. Okay, it asks you to identify the error and then says, what will you do to help this student overcome errors? Now, I'm stating that with careful creation of tasks, what teachers would do if they put in a position like this can be tested through open book exams. The rest of it will be through the practicum, practice teaching. This is not to take away practice teaching. This is the written part of the paper. Okay?
Thank you. Next question, I think, over here.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Geetha. Raju here. In the context in which you have put the whole perspective, I would like to know whether this conceptualization would also require trainer training.
In one word, yes. But I think once we decide as teacher educators that this is what we want to do, the rest will happen. 88, 89, I didn't know how to set open book exams. I started, fell a couple of times, made some mistakes, and learned. What we can land up doing is, every time I correct a paper, I have a question paper which I mark as not just scoring key, but modifications to the paper. Based on answers I get to questions, there are loopholes, there are unexpected answers. I tell myself, okay, this is a problem. Next time, the paper, this question will change. So in a sense, you have to be a reflective paper creator. We have to continue growing as trainers and as teacher educators to continue with and work with open book examinations. But that's great, because I think the day I stop learning, I'll stop teaching.
Thank you. I think there's a lady in the middle here. If you can stand up. Yes, please. Thank you.
Geetha, thank you for your presentation. You've talked about, at the beginning, testing of higher order skills among students. Now, somehow I think that that's a very, acquiring higher order thinking skills is a very slow and steady process. So we need to, bring that into our teaching process. It's very important to talk about teaching of higher order thinking skills, and it cannot just happen, in one go, sitting with. So, I mean, this is basically just a comment, because you did say you're not going to talk about teaching and learning. You're going to talk about only testing. But I think, we cannot separate the two. And it's very important that our teaching programs include that, and learners are taken through that process before we, even begin to test them on that. Thank you.
I think I simply have to say I completely agree with you. And if I'm going to use the problem-solving examples that I showed on validity and reliability, it's obvious that I will have to use similar worksheets in my teaching. But since my focus was on exams, open book exams, I stayed with that. But yes, you cannot lecture and then say, I'm going to give you problem-solving questions in the exam. Absolutely right.
Thank you, Geetha, for your wonderful presentation. But a teacher is known by the teaching, actually. So if his or her performance is to be judged in open book system, aren't we limiting the creative faculty of a teacher in an open zone? And this is the first thing. Another thing is, what are the items in that open book test, maybe? And that can vary, because in one particular setup, that open book system may not match with another particular setup where you are taking the open book system. And for a teacher, when a teacher starts from a text, he goes beyond the text. So there is ample reasons to think that we are taking or leading towards creativity, and maybe starting from zero creativity to maximum creativity that we can create. So the possibility of the creative zone, aren't we limiting that possibility? That is with the humble submission to you.
Two different very quick answers. One, the answer that I gave the gentleman who spoke about practicum and practice teaching. Open book exams do not take away practice teaching. A. B. I think, now let me throw the question back at you. Do existing essay-based reproductive exams tap the creativity of the teacher? They don't. The open book exam at least provides possibility, even in that written 3-hour paper, for creative alternative answers. Going beyond the text while teaching, yes, but that's not part of the open book. It will, with the last example I gave you, creation of materials. See, it's up to us as teacher educators to explore this and make it as different as we want to.
Thank you. The gentleman here at the front.
I liked your presentation very much. There are a few things that I am not very clear about. One, why is it that this open book examination has not caught on at a wider level, it's in public examinations. And in fact, if we really think of an exam of that kind, don't you think that it would be necessary to have examination reform, kind of a movement, kind of, you know, paper setters, workshops all through the country, where people will be motivated towards exams of this type? Because I think it is worth trying, considering that so many people these days have been, you know, indulging in mass copying in public examinations, creating lots of social problems. So an open book exam wouldn't necessarily be an answer to those sort of things, but question paper reform, what we need to test, all the range of objectives to be reformulated sort of thing. So don't you think that would be a very wide kind of paradigm to address?
In one word, yes, we do need an exam reform, but if we go back to objectives, we'll find that many of these higher order skills, reflective thinking, critical thinking, is already listed. And we imagine that we are testing them through closed book essays. But yes, you do need an orientation, we do need an exam reform for paper setting, for conceptualization.
Thank you. I'll take one more from the front and then I'm going to move back. This gentleman here.
Good morning, ma'am, and good morning, everybody. Ma'am, actually, especially my question is to Geetha Durairajan. You are going to all the points and I got think awareness. So my question is that, how awareness can be the access of weak English learners? As a teacher educator, I want to just know that how will you flash the light towards the awareness in weak English learners who are just needy and having expectation of being a good English learner. So that awareness, how awareness can be just access to those level of people, those learners.
Awareness to learners.
Yeah.
About what?
About that they are a little weak in English, but they have expectation for that special English. But how awareness can be brought to them if they are weak?
See, I have a feeling that what you're asking is something that's not related to this examination type as such.
Yeah, really.
So can I discuss this after the presentation with you, please?
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Thank you. The gentleman on the left. Yes.
Yeah, Dr. Geetha Shiva from Chhattisgarh here. Thanks a lot for speaking on something which has been close to my heart since 1980. And I don't know why you said that open book exam cannot be held in higher secondary schools with students, especially in language. I used it in English. Vocabulary teaching, I think the best. Parallel writing, it works very well. For grammar also. For example, take our book of CIFL, where the second lesson was Independence Day. I used it for Republic Day. They got the vocab item from the lesson itself, and all the students wrote composition, very successful composition. Each attempted his or her own composition. So it worked very well in writing also. And vocabulary, excellent. They learn how to use the word in a particular context and the meaning in a particular context. So why did you say that it cannot be used in language? I have used it 2 decades ago.
I think excellent. I think I will only say I assumed it could be used only for vocab. I didn't say it cannot be used at all. You've given me a lovely example of how it can be used in parallel writing. All I'm going to say is my mail ID is here. If anybody here has used open book exams to teach language, to test language proficiency, please write back to me with your examples. Let's spread the word and use it. Thank you, Shivaji, for that example. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like to move to the lady who's just standing up down there. Yes.
Good morning. I'm Sabina Pillai from Delhi University. Thank you, Geetha, for that presentation. Geetha, I'm intrigued by your choice of using the multiple choice question format in an open book exam scheme. Because you see, the basic premise of an open book examination would be in a way to counter the information overload that we're all kind of besieged with. But by using a multiple choice question, you're actually wondering whether the teacher, educator is even clear about her basic concepts. For example, if you look at question number 1, in an open book exam, would you expect your teacher, educator to go start rummaging through her books to find out what these concepts are so that she can answer? That's my question.
Okay, see, if you look at my 2 questions there, it's possible that it's become core knowledge for the teacher and he or she can simply read and say, this is the point. I'm going beyond recall of, give me a definition of simultaneous bilingualism. So I've made it an application question, but let us say that this is somebody who's not so sure, has the freedom to go back and if they have flagged, quickly read and check, so this is what it is. So when you want to check whether base concepts are clear, and I don't want to test memory, this becomes a good option. This will not, and should not become the only way in open book exams, not the only item type. It's a possibility, that's all.
Thank you. There was a gentleman there with the turban, yeah, that one. And after that, yes, you, sir.
Good morning, ma'am. Pavitra Singh from Punjab here.
Can you speak up, please?
Actually, I was wondering over a single question over here. With the context to the Indian society, the open book examination, what kind of the environment do we need over there in the examination centers that should be under the control manner? Actually, with such kind of open examination holding in the examination center, I think there might be kind of a chaos while the examination is going over there in the examination center. So do we need a kind of a more controlled manner examination for especially our society?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the first half. You said in context, what kind of exams?
Context to our society, ma'am, where the regular examination are based on these essay type questions, or we have to cram the answers first and then reply there over in the examination?
No, if the question paper remains, remember, recall, and write long essays, there's no point in using an open book. The questions will have to change from retrieve and recall to problem solving, to applying their knowledge, to doing other kinds of questions. So there's no point if you have to write a long essay in 3 essays in 2 hours. What's the point in doing an essay, an open book?
Good morning, Ms. Geetha. I'm Uttam Kumar from Agartala, Tripura. My question is that, actually, in India, how is it possible to convince the parents exactly? Because parents, they're a real hindrance in certain innovative ideas. Though I would like to say your ideas are really thought-provoking and innovative too. And secondly, how to convince even NCERT in this respect to just conduct such kind of tests in the classroom, and of course in the question papers too. Thank you.
You're saying parents will have a problem. Is that what you're asking? Right? Well, if NCFT is talking about different kinds of evaluation, then if once it gets accepted and is a part of what is approved by the board, I think parents will soon learn to accept. The best part that I found in my survey was even students who had never taken open book exams thought that all exams should be open.
I think we have just time for 2 more questions. There's a lady down the back there standing up. No, keep going to the back. Thank you.
Hello, Geetha. I really like the idea of this open book examination that you're talking about, and I endorse it fully. But there's just one thing that comes to my mind when I look at the practical view of the thing. That is, looking at the constraints, especially at the school level, where teachers, as we all know, are very overworked, and the constraints of time. So, when it comes to setting papers, they have to be an open book system. Always examination requires very innovative paper setting, as we all know, because it has to be has a higher, the kind of questions, inferential questions. And as you already showed in your presentation, that most of the questions that are set are factual questions, though and multiple choice questions which don't really require too much of thought. So considering those kind of constraints, is it really feasible in our present scenario to really have this on a practical level, this kind of an open book system, examination system, to really implement it?
Okay, two small clarification. If you notice, I did not talk about schools, language, content. I spoke about teacher education programs. B, the examples I've given, some of them are multiple choice and true, false, but they are not factual. I think you'll have to go back and read them again to realize it requires you to reflect. I would disagree with your judgment there.
No,
okay,
sorry.
One sec. I'm not talking about taking it into class 6, class 7, class 8 immediately. No. I'm saying teacher education programs can have open book examinations.
Right. Thank you. But any system which is an open book system would require far more innovative paper setting.
Absolutely
as
right.
We all know, rather than a closed book system.
Thank
right?
you.
Yes.
So considering those constraints,
Thank you.
So I'm talking about that.
Can we just take one last question on the floor? The lady in blue standing up, please. And I know there's other people that need to say things, and I'm going to suggest a solution in a moment. So just one last question there. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for the presentation. This is Shishir Khanna from Chhattisgarh. Madam, the best example that comes to my mind as a member of District Center, we conduct the CCE courses and we have open book examination there.
I know that.
I was wondering whether we are able to identify really through these tests whether the teacher or the examinee is able to overcome the language incapability. In fact, if we are trying to see that there is a challenge in any question that is being put up for an open book examination, the challenge needs to be interpreted by the person, by the learner. So in any case, whenever the child is, or whenever the learner is trying to interpret the question, he finds himself in an incapable state through the language. Are we really able to identify that incapability through that open book examination?
I think you've asked a very relevant question about the language level of the question itself. Yes, it will be a problem, but my answer would be, if it's a homogeneous group where they speak a language, if necessary, and we are testing higher order content, if required, as the examiner, translate into the first language, let them get the content, do the thinking, answer with whatever they can.
Thank you. I'm conscious there's quite a lot of other hands in the room, and I'm afraid we don't have time for all of them now. But can I just ask you to put your hands up if you would be interested in a coffee shop session later with Geetha? Can you put your hands up if there would be an interest there? Okay, so I think there's a few. So if I could ask Daph, please, to arrange a time, and we'll advertise it on the board later today. But I would just like to give a small token of appreciation to Geetha for her fabulous contribution this morning, and I'm sure you'd all like to join me in a round of applause for Geetha's presentation. Thank you. And I think, Alison, you've got a few words to say, yeah?
Thank you very much, Geetha and Sarah, for that very interesting session. A few announcements before you disappear for coffee. Some notices. Nirmali Hetarachichi from Sri Lanka, her flight has been delayed, so her session scheduled today from 11:30 to 1 will be postponed. Shannon West and Jane Massey, who are presenting a session on program evaluation for education programs. The time is incorrect in the program. It should be 11:30, not 10:30. The poster presentations will be taking place during lunch breaks, so please go and stand by the posters over the lunch if you would like to meet the designers of the posters. Please go to the British Council stall. We have a competition running throughout the entire 3 days, and the lucky winner may win a trip to the EFL conference in the UK next year. Finally, that's exciting, isn't it? Finally, please do make sure that you take advantage of Facebook and Twitter. We have a Twitter hashtag, which is TEC12, Teacher Educator Conference 12. If you are unfamiliar with Facebook or Twitter and you would like to learn more about it, please visit the British Council stall where somebody will help you. Thank you very much. Coffee is now served. Here is the Twitter wall at the moment. I think we have Cherry Matthew, who's here somewhere, who's our most active tweeter at the moment. I don't know where he is, but he's been regularly updating. So please do take advantage. Coffee will be served now in this hall, and the next session starts at 11:30. Thank you.